Welcome to the YouTube Passive Income Show, which is part of the Master Passive Income Network. My name is Denis Trufin, and I'm here to help you create freedom in your time, money, and work through long-term growth and the power of YouTube.
And my name is George, and I'm here to support Denis and his vision to help you and your goals.
Okay, so in today's episode, we're going to be talking about who is Denis, which is me. And we're also going to be talking about what is YouTube passive income and this show, and like what we're all about and what we're going to be bringing to you on a weekly basis when it comes to content to help you reach your goals.
Exactly. And I'm excited to let you guys know that this is episode 1.
Episode 1. Now, to get started, we actually have a fun little segment that we started to come up with before putting on this show, and we like to call it the FIRE segment. George, you want to take away what the FIRE segment stands for?
Yeah, it's actually fervent, inspiring, radiating, and energy. So who has been that this week for you?
Okay, so the way we're doing this is I am so focused on paying attention to people's passions and interests and them sharing that with the world. So I have started to build up a list and pay attention to these people. And so the first person on this list, I actually got to go find his channel while I'm like actually doing this, or their channel, I should say. So there's a content creator called Sandcastle University.
Okay.
I love it. And they make money by building stuff out of sand at the beach, whether it's like a house, a logo, or like a family vacation decor, so people can take photos with it in the sand, and they do it full time.
Which is crazy.
I think it's amazing. It's incredible. I got addicted to watching their stuff, and it's so cool that somebody's able to make money doing what they absolutely love. And, you know, that's in part what this whole podcast is going to be about, is being able to make money doing those things.
Yeah, turn your passion into income. Why not?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, let's go ahead and get the show started today.
Yeah, let's get to know you a little bit more.
Okay, so on today's episode, like we mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about a little bit about me and kind of how I got started and what we're building towards for the long term. And before we really get into that, I did want to quickly mention that we do have an academy.
Yes.
Called the Ranked Video Blueprint Academy, which George and I run, and we support content creators who are wanting to build long-term growth for YouTube, create passive income, and create a life for themselves that they're excited for.
Yeah, no, it's great. Again, it's an academy. We meet twice a month. Just if you want to start somewhere, that's the way to go.
Yeah, and we'll have resources in the show notes down below for you as well too, so you can check us out, reach out to us if you have any questions about it, so we can kind of break it down a little bit more for you if you are interested in that topic. So let's talk a little bit about me, where I'm at, and what got me to this point as well too, because for the most part, I want to make sure that people understand when I'm talking about YouTube passive income, I've also myself created passive income through YouTube.
Exactly. Like, who are you? Why are you talking to us? Like, who makes you you, right?
You're a great co-host. I don't know if you knew that. So those are great questions. So I'm going to get started here. So currently where I'm at today, and then we're going to backtrack here a little bit as well too, because I think it'll be good to know where I'm at and then where we came from. And so right now I have 4 YouTube channels, and they create passive income for me to then be able to focus on other areas of my life, other businesses that I want to put my time and energy into.
Yeah.
And they are effectively set up in a way where when I don't have the opportunity to give them attention, they still generate income for me, whether it's through ad revenue from YouTube or through affiliate work, which is working with brands to get signups, or even sponsorships where companies will pay me. Now, those are a little bit less passive, so we won't probably talk about that as much, but the other 2 areas, the YouTube ads and affiliate play, and also self-promoting products, are a huge way to be able to build up that passive income.
Yeah, and what's that phrase you like to say that you should probably get coined?
Oh, okay, so my favorite phrase, I like that you bring, again, such a great co-host here. So one of the quotes that I kind of came up with, which was, I have 720 versions of myself working for me 24/7, never get sick, never get bored, never get tired, and bring me in income.
They haven't complained, at least I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, no. So just in case you're not familiar with like YouTube and how it kind of works on the back end, is we create what they call evergreen content, which allows people to be able to create something that regardless of when that person's watching it, that information is relevant to them.
Yeah.
So usually like think about something where about like how-tos on a lot of products or basic information that will be relevant to the person. That's what we kind of create and focus on. So that way we can make videos from, today, and then 6 years from now, somebody is still watching it and gets that information, and it helps them in their process for whatever they're wanting to do.
Yeah. And again, even with that, it's like creating content to blow up doesn't really generate passive income. It'd be short, right?
Yeah.
Creating evergreen content will usually create the longevity passive income, which is awesome.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to be talking about here in this series on the show, which is just really building up that whole foundation. The first 10 episodes are actually structured in that way to be able to have a really good foundation. And then we're going to dive in even deeper and talk about different ways to be able to do it and how it can work for you and the passions that you have as well. Because I think personally for me, we live in a day and age that anyone can talk about the things that they love and make money doing it.
Yeah, obviously that's why we talk about, who's on fire this week, right? Is because you can, in today's day and age, do something that you're passionate about and create an income off of it.
Exactly. So continuing on with my story. So now that I'm at this part, like I said, I run 4 YouTube channels. I did start with one back in May of 2017. So it's about 6.5 years ago as of this recording. And I got started with my biggest passion, which is finance. Yep. But the funny part is the story actually starts way before that, but I'll kind of break that down in a little bit later. So I started on talking about personal finance. And then I started doing that for pretty much almost a second job. I worked a full-time job and I had that. And then I was going through the motions of like building everything up. And it's so funny to me how much time I put into that work and got little pay. One, because I didn't know, right? And here I'm going to teach you some things to get started early on with making money so you don't make the same mistakes that I did. And realizing that, it does take time and effort to put in. I like to say that, we grow the roots in our tree so we can get the fruit.
Yep.
Later, because you can't get the fruit right away, especially if you want it to be evergreen, last long, become passive. You have to build those roots. And in order to do that, that takes a little bit of time. It takes energy. It takes effort. You reap what you sow, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right. And so I did that for the early parts of my career and my channel. The one that originally became successful, that one's called True Financials. And about 2 years in, I was able to go full time. Just 2 years. Now, when I say full time, I still had to put in a lot of work and effort because I wasn't generating that much money when I quit. I actually quit with making less than I did at my day job. And I was, kind of thinking, well, if I have enough, all this extra time, I can just put more into the business and then grow it. Side note, that first month after quitting was my worst month at that point because, month after month I was growing and then I hit that quitting month and then it was the worst month ever. So it freaked me out. But I stayed consistent. I stayed at it and it obviously worked out really well for me. So I would say at this point, now that we're 6.5 years into the overall channel, it's self-producing essentially.
Self-sustaining.
Self-sustaining. And it creates awareness of the information that I share because I love this so much. I've released content 6 years ago and people are still watching it today.
Yeah.
6 years ago. That's a long time.
Oh, yeah. No, and again, that's why it's your content specific, right?
Yeah.
You weren't trying to create something that had a short-term return on investment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, our ROI is always in the future. And, now it's a little easier to, and we'll get more into this in later episodes as far as, the time it takes to build all of this up and even individual episodes. I still release content to this day that doesn't generate a lot of quote unquote buzz or focus because I know long-term where it's going to take us. Yep. So going back to the story. So as I was gaining some success in my overall journey, after I had gone full-time in the first 2 years, and then about 1.5 years after that or so, I ended up opening up another YouTube channel because I was like, well,
got to test it out again.
Got to test out my theory. And sure enough, that one ended up doing really well as well. And that one's called The Business Nerd. And that's where I teach people how to utilize business software and tools and applications to help them with their business because I also love that as well. So I have 2 big passions, personal finance and business. And so I made channels out of them.
Yeah, expanding your reach.
Yeah. Now I have other channels that I've, again, also kind of testing out the theory and kind of putting things out there and seeing how that works. They don't generate anywhere nearly as much passive income as these main 2 channels do. And they also still generate something for me because, again, I've learned that I can do it even in a small scale. And that's obviously a lot of what we're going to talk about long term is how even small amount of views can make such a big impact because everybody kind of looks at it from the outside perspective of I need 1,000 or millions of views and then be able to generate income. No, that's not the case. We could do this in small views and actually have big impact.
Yeah. No, I love that. We're talking about you starting about 6.5 years ago. What was your why behind it?
Oh, that's a good question. So for me, I really felt like I wanted to do something that was impactful and important. And the other why was I would say all these things about personal finance to my wife all day, every day. And kind of get into one ear and go out the other. And I would help her go to sleep by sharing with her my passions on personal finance. And so honestly, part of that was just being able to find other people that were like-minded about the things that I had passion for and be able to share that out with them. And so those were like two really big whys. And then I think as we continued going through this, it really was, oh man, I am actually able to support these people more than I even thought I could by just sharing what I'm doing. I'm actually able to answer their questions and serve them, which now became a bigger thing. And then it actually led me into where I'm at today now, which is helping people get to the passive income, because helping people create passive income through YouTube is kind of like a blend of the two channels that I have created, which is business
and financial.
Because I want to help people create that freedom in time, money, and work. In order to do that, like I know the keys and I know the answer, and I want to help those people who are listening and that are wanting to gain that experience and that knowledge to be able to have it for themselves. And I think it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to say this is like, sounds easy, right? But I mean, I also know all the work that was put into it, right? Like you said, it took 2 years to even step away from your full-time job to be able to do this full-time. How was that?
Like working the full-time job?
Yeah.
And having a full-time outside of that, which was
full-time YouTube and
full-time YouTube. It was a lot. You know, I would definitely not want to sugarcoat things and be like, oh, this was the easiest. I also don't think people have to do it the way I did it, which we'll continue to break down more and more over the episodes as well too. So for me, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I could not continue working for other people. The cost of my time was so valuable that like I was willing effectively to give up everything else, knowing that I wanted to be happy with what I was doing and how it was impacting the world. I was working retail and I was serving, but I wasn't serving the way I would want to be serving for people. And when I started producing content on YouTube, it felt right. And it felt like this was the path for me to take. Now, we'll go into it again in the future where it's like ended up where I didn't know I was going to go.
Yeah, I remember us talking about that.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, it was I'm just going to put myself out there. I'm going to see where it goes. And then I'm going to kind of just play it by ear, so to speak, because I knew that what I was doing currently, which was, again, that retail work, wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, there were a lot of days, and we're going to go into a whole discussion about this, where I wanted to quit. I wanted to not be doing it anymore. And I also knew that not just for myself, but for the people that I was serving, it would be a disservice for them.
Yeah.
Right? Because, and this also works for any passion, right? And if somebody's listening and was like, well, yeah, but you want to help people finances, that's a noble thing, right? Well, I also think that the person who's building those sandcastles that we talked about at the beginning of the episode, I think them being able to share their passion is so noble because it's showing the permission for other people that have that passion that it's okay and amazing to do the things that you're really, really good at.
Oh, yeah.
And that you have excitement for. Like, I don't know about you, but like, I wouldn't want to watch somebody building sandcastles that was doing it for a quote unquote job because somebody was telling them to do it versus because they were excited to do it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and like the videos that I saw, you know, that person was they were just so passionate about what they were doing. And they're giving permission to those other people. Maybe somebody's not going to go and want to, you know, make a living building sandcastles, but they might want to be more encouraged to go and build sandcastles the next time they're at the beach that they might not have done otherwise. And that's powerful and impactful that I don't think you could get for working for somebody else.
Yeah. And just to add to that is they might be doing these things on social media, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, whatever it is, but not know how to turn it into a passive income. And that's where it could be like, hey, this is why Dennis, right? And share a little bit about that. But yeah, just showing us, well, why you, right? You sharing a little bit of your background and how you got here, but where else are you currently at?
Yeah, I mean, so right now, you know, we talked a little bit about the academy, and that's helping people also achieve that goal because I understood that doing it alone, you can go pretty far, but doing it together, doing it alone, you can go fast, but doing it together, you can go far. And that's kind of what the academy is all about. And that's what, like, honestly, this podcast is about too, because I want to just give out all this information. I want to share with people. If you just take this information and you implement it and you're successful, I'm so excited.
That's what we're here for, right?
Yeah. You can email me and tell me, like, hey, Dennis, I did this. And, you know, this is where I'm at. I actually was at a conference recently where the gentleman actually had taken some of my information and ended up going full-time for himself in the golfing space. And it was so incredible because he's like, Dennis, it changed my life. And it was funny, my wife was there, and, she's heard me talk about things and, share the fun and great stories from other people that have experienced getting to where they want to be on YouTube. But this was the first time she saw somebody in person and sharing with me their experience of what I helped them with.
Yeah.
And what was beautiful, it was all analytical. So we'll break a lot of things down on YouTube, and there's a lot of great content and resources also on YouTube on how to, get started. There's also a thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about, which is how the numbers tell a story on the back end of YouTube. And that's what I'm going to be guiding people through a lot with these episodes, which is really understanding that YouTube is one of the most amazing platforms to be on. And we're going to obviously talk even deeper on how YouTube functions and works. But like at its core, it is serving an audience, and you get to be using that as a means to reach them.
Yeah.
And then the data that comes back is just information that we can utilize to help create either more content, pivot, or do different things based off of it, because it doesn't have any emotions.
Yeah.
It's just information for us. And if things aren't working, we're not mad at YouTube. We're understanding it based off of the data. And that's what I helped that other person with at that conference. He's like, yeah, I took your information based off of what you saw in my data, and I ran with it.
Yep.
And then became, full-time, exciting. Like, I got so thrilled.
Yeah. Well, and you could turn that data into good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've seen the back end of YouTube, and not knowing what each data point means is overwhelming. There's a lot of information, but you could utilize that to your advantage. And Dennis, you've shown me that, right, through what we've worked through, and even seeing that in the academy, and again, you'll get to know a little bit more about Dennis and I together, but I'm in the academy as well, and seeing one of the other people in there, how he's talked about what he's been able to do in the last, I think we started 4 months ago,
Like 3-4 months
3-4 months ago, and just the impact it's had in his life.
Yeah, his January was actually the highest income month that he's had essentially on record, and he's only doing it part-time right now. And
yeah,
that income jump was because of YouTube. And, some of it is that quote-unquote luck piece, but it's also because he was adamant about creating content, and he was in a space that people were supporting him in as well, too.
Correct.
Which is really important. Again, that was a big thing for me when it was coming through this process of building up my YouTube channel, which was the first year or so, I was by myself, and I would talk to my wife and say, hey, these are my struggles. And she would be like, oh, I'm sorry. But
didn't quite understand that.
Doesn't quite understand. And nothing against that, but it's just more of, it was hard to share something and not have a person fully understand you. And that's true for honestly anything, right?
Anything. Yeah.
And so what was fascinating was, and now we're going to go back into my story here, which was around that year marker, maybe a little bit after I started my channel, I posted something on my community tab on YouTube, which is essentially letting me reach out to my audience and everything. And I put something in there talking about hey, it's a real struggle to be a content creator at times, right? And at this point I wasn't full-time yet and everything. And a gentleman actually reached out to me saying, hey, I saw your comment and I'm also a content creator and I feel those same things, blah, blah, blah. And giving me support essentially. And I was like, hey, let's get on a call. Let's talk.
Let's chat about this.
And so we got on a call, we started talking, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. This guy gets me. This guy understands me 100%. And then I started kind of collecting other content creators around the same topic that I would talk about, which is in the main channel, which is finance. And I ended up building out what they call a mastermind. So it's essentially just a group of people. We would meet every week. At this point, it was just something I was kind of keeping together to kind of hold myself accountable and sane, because sometimes it felt like I was so alone. And that was a big aspect of what kept me going, was these people that also understood, because when I was doing really well and somebody wasn't, I can hold their hand up and support them. And then when the tables turned and I wasn't doing well and they were able to hold me high as well.
Yeah. I mean, the weight was carried collectively.
Exactly.
Right. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but actually what happened after, if you remember, after joining that mastermind and doing that, if I remember correctly, you had one of your biggest years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So about a year into that mastermind, we were coming to the end of 2019. And this was the fascinating part too, which was the data.
Yep.
So the data, we kind of discussed a little earlier, which was the data was telling me a lot of information, and it was effectively telling me, hey, Dennis, the main thing you want to be doing on YouTube might not be your thing. Here's what is working for you. And it was tutorials that I was teaching people on and off, just random episodes, not really thinking too much of it. And those videos would just constantly just do so well for me long term. They would, get 0 views at the beginning, and then months later I would see them creeping up and becoming like my number 1, 2, 3, and 4th top videos. And so I had to make that decision, and I was talking to it with this group of, hey, this is what YouTube data is telling me. And the funny part is I cried for like 2 months.
Yeah.
I think at one of the calls, I think actual tears came out of my face because I was like, that's not what I thought I was going to be. That's not what I wanted to do originally. And something in my gut was like, Dennis, just roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Like, just go with it. And because I followed the data rather than my need to be right, so to speak, what ended up happening was I had my best year ever.
Yeah.
After that. So 2020, and I know it was really unfortunate for a lot of people at that time, and that was my best year. I actually made more money that year than I ever had working for somebody else. Because the year in 2019, even though I was already full-time that first year, I was getting close to making about the same as I was, because I was a full year into working for myself.
Just normal when starting a business, right?
Yeah. And so that was incredible. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine if I had stuck with what wasn't working data-wise and wanting to be right versus like following through. And what's beautiful about it is I feel like I have bigger impact on what I do now than where I was before. But I think my head of like my ego didn't want to take that. And so effectively I got to, push my ego aside and just say what's best for the audience and what's going to help both, long-term growth and effort and effect and support.
Well, and to add to that is because you follow the data and because you followed continue creating that content that audience and everybody wanted and needed, right? You actually now get to create the content you're actually really passionate about, right? Like
So you make a really good point too, which is a big deal for me, especially when working with a lot of people who are like, well, but I want to make what I want to make.
Yeah, it will come.
I hear you. And what does it look like to serve first?
Yeah.
Right. And so like one of my other channels that I have kind of just in the back end doesn't really do a lot more than me just kind of almost sharing my insights with a small group of people, but I still get to make it because it's essentially subsidized by the thing that is bringing in the bacon, so to speak. And I can be content with the content I love to make the most doesn't make me as much, but the content that helps the most ends up being the thing that brings in that passive income.
Yeah. And I love that we got to discuss some of the hard parts, right? And it allows people to know, like, are you up for it? Right? Like even with that. And again, that was just a brief little window into who you are.
Yeah, there's more complexity, there's more story, and some of this will come back up as well throughout the overall series and the show, because we're going to be talking about, different tools, different ways to look at things, different ways to plan, and like some of these stories will come back up as well too. And I think one of the things I want to kind of look at from the very early part of it, which, like I said, now we're running multiple YouTube channels successfully. We've supported other content creators and they've gone on to become successful in their own right, whether it's going full time, whether it's creating a lot of income, whether it's, just at least getting to share their story, whatever version of success looks like, because it's going to be so different for everybody. I've been around enough people to see the possibilities. And I believe in a world now that you can have your passion and make money doing it and share it with the world. Like I think wholeheartedly, I don't think anyone can ever stop me from that belief, because I've seen it and I've felt it from those people, and I know it could happen for anybody. Yeah. And going all the way back to the beginning.
Back to the beginning.
Here's my favorite part of my overall story. My main channel.
I know where you're going with
this. My main channel, True Financials, is technically the first successful channel I've had that got me where I'm at today. But that was actually the third YouTube channel I've ever created. I actually had 2 other channels that I tried before, and they did not work, partly because I didn't know how to actually functionally go through the process, which again, we're going to be sharing here.
That'll be a whole nother show. Yeah.
And I don't think that those were the things I got to share with the world, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to for those listening to the very first episode and sticking around with us through this, I'm going to share with you what these are. I'm not going to say the channel names because I actually kind of forgot what they're named.
I have to go back and do some research.
I have to go back. They still exist. So if you do enough research, you might be able to find them. So one of them the very first one was a gaming channel.
Okay.
This was 2011, at the hype of YouTube really starting to take off, because I think it came out in 2010. And then in 2011 or 12 or so, I opened up a channel, started talking about video games and products and games coming out. I used to work at GameStop. And so I kind of had
that's where that passion came from.
I don't want to say insights, but I had insights and stuff like that. Yeah. Although funny enough, that passion diminished quite a bit as far as gaming, but it was still something I wanted to share. So I was, again, glad it didn't end up taking off, but I learned some stuff from that.
Yeah.
And then my second channel was one where when my wife and I went traveling for a year through Europe, we wanted to share that on YouTube. So we would record videos, and like this was back in 2016. So there wasn't like TikTok and Instagram Reels to like, you know, share in short bits. We had to make a full video. And I did that for, I would say, the better part of like 6 or 7 months while traveling to showcase like our overall travels. And so those videos still exist as well too. So you can see me traveling through Europe for a whole year. And so that one didn't take off. And I think I'm really glad for it, because as much as I love to travel, sharing that with the world wasn't the area that I wanted to really bring out. And there are people who are out there sharing their travels, and they're doing such a good job of teaching people how to do what they're doing. Yeah. And that's great. Just wasn't for me. But I've learned so much. And then a year later is when I started the True Financials channel. So I can only imagine like the buildup of like all of these lessons, and not taking these losses as L's, right? I took them as great lessons, and
learning curves.
Yeah. I took them into my main channel, and I was just like, okay, I've known this process a tiny bit, and this feels a little different. Yeah. Now I'm gonna dive in. And again, there's some things, and we'll talk in another episode as well too, about like a lot of the mistakes as well too, because there were tons of them. Yeah. I would be lying to you if I said that I didn't make pretty much every mistake in the book to begin with. And so I'm here to help you, you know, not take all of those same mistakes, because you're still going to make them. You're still going to have mistakes, and that's going to be beautiful, and you're going to learn so much from those. And also, what are some of those things that you can kind of tippy-toe around, because now you have somebody in your tool belt like myself. Correct. To be able to guide you through these and not have to make all of those same ones.
Well, because again, whether it's your failures or someone else's, failures are usually the key to success.
Oh, yeah. Show me somebody who's made it successful, and I guarantee you they've had all the failures in the back end as well too. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing.
And again, I love that you went into diving into it, right? So diving into the work that goes into creating the freedom in time, money, and work.
Yeah. And we're going to do that through the power of YouTube, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I love it.
So like we mentioned earlier, we're going to have all the resources in the show notes down below if you want to check it out. That way you can connect with myself or George, and we can have this conversation continue on with the entire series of this show, which is going to be beautiful. We've already mapped out the first 10 episodes, which are a beautiful foundation to help you get started with being able to build a YouTube channel and be able to have an impact in the world and be able to bring in income as well. Yes. So I want to say thank you everyone for listening.
Yep. Thank you for being here.
And we'll see you at the next episode.
Have a good one.